So I will talk about testing web accessibility today. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Adrian. I'm from Madrid, Spain. Actually, I'm now in Vienna, Austria, because I live here. I'm a team lead. I'm the web team lead in the company, and I'm a front-end developer as well, and I'm a strong accessibility advocate. And you can find me almost everywhere under my surname. So let's talk about accessibility first. I usually get the question on what is this A11Y that you can always see when we talk about accessibility. So that means, and this is the international acronym for accessibility, because there is 11 letters between the A and the Y. So yeah, case solve. But it's always nice to say that at the beginning, because I'm gonna use this a lot now. So why is so obvious in the real world that those 4 situations are completely wrong? In the first 2, we have a steep stair ramp, so poor people with wheelchair here. In the third one, we have stairs at the end of the ramp, and in the fourth one is a totally unusable ramp. So this is so obvious in the real world. Maybe another example: someone arrives with a wheelchair, and there is a button for disabled people, and surprise, the door opens automatically, but there is stairs in the other side. So why is this so obvious in the real world, but when we go to the online world, it's not that obvious? So accessibility means that websites and tools and technologies, things that we use every day and we develop and we design, needs to be accessible for people with disabilities so they can use them. So we cannot exclude those people from using your product or your services. So let's imagine that you go to a online shop, a e-commerce, and then you want to know your previous purchases. So you call the customer support and you ask, where can I find them? Maybe they can tell you something like, oh, you need to click in the button in the top right corner. Or maybe you want to change your email address, and they can tell you, oh, you need to click in the button with the engine icon. But for blind people, there's no top right corner. There's no button who looks like an engine. So we need to have this in mind when we develop. Let me give you quick numbers. 2 years ago, we were around 7.6 billion people in the world. And more than 1 billion people live with some form of visual impairment. So when we develop our services, our websites, our e-commerce, our online shops, we always want to reach as mass people as possible. So this is our audience. We need to care about these people as well. I'm not going to talk about developing web accessibility today. I had a different talk about that called How Does Your Website Sound Like? You can Google it later. But I'm gonna talk about testing, how to make sure that what you develop is accessible. Testing web accessibility, automate those tests can free up your testing team, your QA team, from manual testing every part of your application. But this is not magic. They cannot automatically make your site accessible. We cannot forget that only 20 to 50% of the issues of the accessibility issues can be detected with automate tests. So we need to understand that automate tests are part of a larger testing process where manual tests are as important as the automate ones. So I've created a very simple React application with 3 tiny components. The first one is a button. The second one is a fake button, which is an anchor link with the role button. So sneak peek, never do that. And the other one is an image. And in the entry point of the application, I put a bunch of errors in the HTML. So let's see if we can find it with the tools that I'm going to show you today. I like to structure this talk in 3 parts. So the 3 parts are the times that I normally test. So the first one is I test during the development process, during while I develop. The second one is maybe you can fall into thinking that you're done, or maybe you inherit a code base, so maybe you have to test everything as once, so the whole DOM structure, the whole application. And the third one, as we discussed before, is manual testing, so testing in the browser. So let's start with testing the code. Since I'm using React, the company DQ Labs created a family of tools called Axe, and one of these tools is React Axe. Let me start with this one. So what you need to do is install it as a developer dependency in your React application. Then you need to call the function, and you need to make sure that you only require import, depending on the React version or TypeScript you use. You need to only do this in an environment which is not production, because then you will expose those errors in the console log. Why do I say so? Because the results of this library will be displayed in the console of your browser developer tools. In this case, I'm using Chrome. So in the Chrome DevTools console, I'm gonna see the issues that I have in my application. If I have the same error more than once, they are going to be grouped, and as well is going to be attached to a severity level. So from minor, moderate, serious to critical. And what I believe is the best thing of this tool is they tell you what is the issue. So, for example, we have elements must have sufficient color contrast, or images must have alternate text. Then it's going to tell you where is the error. So it's going to tell you where is the HTML node in your application, or actually in your DOM structure. And it's going to give you a link to dquniversity.com. This is the official documentation from DQ, not the official from accessibility, from the official from DQ Labs, who provides documentation on what is the issue and how to solve the issue, so you can learn for next time. So yes, you can see this in the browser. Another example of a tool to use while you are developing. If you're using TypeScript, you can use teslint or eslint if you're using pure JavaScript. But linters are very useful when you develop. For those who doesn't know what the linter is, I hope not a lot. A linter is basically a set of rules. So you mainly tell the code editor, tell me that I'm wrong when I'm doing this. So every time that you break a rule, then the code editor is going to tell you that you're breaking this rule. So there is a plugin for accessibility in JSX. As I said, for TypeScript, for TSX and TSLint, there is another one. And it is enough to include the plugin, of course, to the eslint rc.json file. And with line 12, which means extending the recommended rules of accessibility, you will be safe. I prefer to extend or to explicitly set the rules that I want. For example, there is a rule that you can specify the name of the components that you want to test, or to skip if you don't want to test them. So I think I found them very useful. And of course, you will see in the code editor, I use Visual Code, this wavy underline, red underline. And if you hover, then this context menu will tell you with the vulnerability, the issue that you're creating with this code, so you can immediately fix it, and you don't even need to see it in the browser. As well, the linter will display the issues in the terminal when you npm run or yarn run, depending on the package that you're using, the package manager. But you will see this as well in the terminal. And the third one that I use while I test, and probably is my favorite, is Jest. Jest is a JavaScript library to write unit tests. It's very useful, and I normally use it in conjunction with the React testing library. And as well, for Deque Labs, the Axe family has a library for Jest, so you have to install it as a developer dependency in your application, as before, and you can write your accessibility test. So in the test that you are seeing just now, what I'm doing is importing the whole app. So I'm taking the entry point of the application, not a component, but the whole app. And using the React DOM server, I'm converting the whole app to a string. Why am I doing this? Because like this, I can throw the string to the Axe engine to analyze it. And of course, I expect not to have no violations. And when I npm run test, then in the terminal, then I will see obviously the test outcome. And since it's the Axe family, mainly is always the same outcome as the React Axe in the browser. So you will see what is the issue, where in the DOM structure is the issue. And as well, you will have a structure link to Deque University. And as we said before, there is the documentation how to solve the issue. So those are the three tools that I use while I develop. There are more for sure, but those are the ones that I use every day. Sometimes we fall in the illusion on thinking that we are done. Or maybe you arrive to a company and you inherit a code base, maybe. So they've never done any accessibility tech, so you need to start from a already mature product. So you can test the whole DOM structure. Again, Deque, we are back to the Axe family. They have a CLI, so you can use it in the terminal. In this case, you need to install it globally in your machine, and you have to use it in the terminal, put in Axe, and followed by the URL that you want to test. So it will run a Chrome headless instance, and it will pass or try to pass the Axe engine, and pretty much the same outcome on every Axe family library or tool. You will see what is the violation, where in the DOM structure actually is going to give you the whole map, and it's going to group if you have the violation more than one time, and of course the link to the Deque University, as we said before. Very similar application, very similar library, is the PA11Y. You need to install it globally in your application, and it works exactly the same. You put in your terminal PA11Y, followed by the URL that you want to test. And in this case, it's going to probably, I would say, is a headless browser. I don't know if it's Chrome. And we get the very similar outcome. We know what the error is. It is a bit more detailed because it's going to give us the principles and the guidelines from the WCAG AA or AAA that we are violating. Same thing, we're going to see the whole map in the DOM structure and the specific element that is causing this error. The only difference here is that we are not going to be prompt with a link to any documentation. So it is our homework to go to Google and find out how can we fix those issues. As well, you can run this against a local host, so there's no issue to host your application beforehand in any test or any even test environment. So, but sometimes I got the answer. I got the question when I show this tool to some people. Say, oh, but I have a lot of URLs to test, like really a bunch of them. So P11Y has a CI, so you can have a JSON, a config file, where you can set some URLs. And the fun part here is that you can give some config. You can give some actions. So the first, of course, is an array of objects, and the first one is purely the URL that I want to test. The second one, I'm giving the URL and some timeout, and I'm taking a screen capture, so maybe you can use this for reporting purposes, or maybe you have a visual regression test engine, you can use it for that. And as I said, for me, the fun part here is that I can perform actions in the website. So I can take a screen capture, I can navigate, I can expect a element with an ID or a class to be loaded in the window and then click. So I can perform some actions that allows me to navigate through the website. So if I execute the command p11y CI, then it's gonna look for the JSON file in the root of my project. It's gonna run the 3 tests, and the outcome is gonna be the same as the previous example, because it's always stackoverflow.com in this case. Pretty much the same again. What is the error? Where is the error? And in the root of my project, I'm gonna see these captures. So again, I can use it for reporting purposes or automating these visual regression tests. Lighthouse. Lighthouse is a tool developed by Google and is included in every Google Chrome browser. But you can as well use it in the terminal, which allows us to automate or include this into our building pipeline, or even into our continuous delivery process. So we can only release code to production if those tests are passed. So as well, Lighthouse followed by the URL that I want to test. In this case, I'm using the parameter --view because I want to view the report afterwards. So it's going to generate an HTML report afterwards. But in this case, it's not going to be a headless browser. It's going to be a full Chrome instance that is going to perform a lot of tests. Performance, accessibility, responsiveness, low internet, no CSS, a lot of tests. You can see in the terminal all the tests that is running, and you can see live in the instance of Chrome how they run. And at the end, it's gonna generate this HTML report that is gonna be saved in the root of your application. Pretty much the same as the other ones. It's going to tell you what are the errors in accessibility, in what element do you have the error, and a bit of information on how to solve it, and of course the direct link to the documentation from Google on how to solve those issues. So pretty beneficial. So this is the main features of every testing tool to test the DOM, in my opinion, of course. So the first one, as I said, you have the direct link to the Deco University, so you don't need to Google anything. For Pay 11Y, I think the fun part is that you can have config options, so you can perform access in the website. And for Lighthouse, you can dump this report into an HTML for reporting purposes, or into a JSON or CSV for maybe automatize these building pipeline or the continuous delivery. But as I said at the beginning, only 20 to 50% of the accessibility issues can be found using tools, using automate techniques. So manual testing is very important as well. So normally, since I'm using Google Chrome, I use a bunch of extensions. And as well, I use the screen reader built in Mac. I use a Mac. So every operating system has a built-in screen reader. Mac has VoiceOver, Windows has Narrator, and Linux has Orca. None of them are really used by blind people because they normally use yaws or NVIDIA. Yaws is very, very expensive, but NVIDIA is an open source for Windows. But it's very good to hear how does your website sound like. But in this case, I'm talking about visually or Chrome extensions to find out accessibility issues. So those are the ones that I'm going to show you today. Let's start with the first one. Again, we are back to the Axe family from jQuery. They have a extension. You can find it under the developer tools. It's called Axe, and you can click in Analyze. It's gonna do a full analysis on your website, and pretty much the same as the React Axe in the console or the Axe CLI in the terminal. Is gonna tell you what are the errors, where in the DOM structure, what element is the one that is causing this. You have some information directly in the extension, and of course you have the link to jQuery University so you can find how to solve it. Very, very similar extension is ARC Toolkit. You can find that as well under the developer tools, and you need to click in Run Test. You can see a bunch of categories. And in this case, I'm going to focus on images, for example, and you can see the error. You can click and you can go directly to inspect the element. And if you check the window, then it's going to be highlighted. So in this case, you will see what images are not having an alt property. Accessibility Insights. This tool, I really like it because they have a lot of functionalities, and one that I'm going to show you today is about tab order. So the tab order on your website is very important because normally visually impaired people don't use a mouse to navigate through in your website. Normally they use either a special keyboard or they use the tab key to navigate. That means the tab order of your website needs to be consistent with the content of your website. So Accessibility Insights can create a map on the tabs order. So if you execute it, you can keep tabbing, and it's going to automatically make a map on the order of those tabs. So you can later see and analyze if that tab order is consistent with the content of your data of your website. So if you're jumping up and down and footer to header and then images and then buttons, then you need to rethink the tab order or your HTML structure. Wave, it's been redone and it was refactored not long ago, like 2, 3, 4 months ago, and I think it's the most complete one. So it's under the extensions, and once you click, it will perform the whole test. And you can have some details. You can see in this case the images that they don't have an alt text. You can see the structure of the headings, very good as well for SEO. H1, H2, H3s. You can see the contrast, AA, AAA, what are they passing, what are they not passing. You can take out the whole CSS, the whole style, so you can see, again, if the content, if the real content of the website is consistent in the DOM structure. And you can spec the code if you're willing to analyze a bit more the code that is rendered, so the real HTML code. NoCoffee. Sometimes I show you some tools to perform tests, but a lot of times I said that I use a screen reader sometimes to simulate what a visually impaired people will hear. But sometimes it's nice as well to simulate what the visually impaired people will see or not see. So NoCoffee is an extension that simulates different disabilities or issues. So, for example, blurry, you forgot your glasses at home, so maybe you will see the website like this, or you can analyze if the font size or if the colors are correct, maybe glaring, or snow. Some people have some snow in their eyes, some cloudiness, color blindness, or protanopia, for example. All the colors will be distorted, or no colors at all. So we cannot only rely on colors. So red is bad and green is good. We need to include some messages, maybe a bit more in the big issues. So central, peripheral vision, floaters, big ones. So we can simulate how those people will see our website, and then we can create a better website. So those are the tools that I normally use to test the code that I develop and to see if it's accessible or not. Mainly, I find almost every issue in the development phase and in the browser phase. I don't usually test the whole DOM, because if you have the luck to start a process, to start a project from the beginning with accessibility in mind, then you don't have to test the whole thing, because you will be testing the accessibility while you're developing, and as well in the browser. So manual test as well is very important. So the React application, again, is very small, and it is under my GitHub, so you can find there the packaging and the linting options and the React code, so easy to understand. The slides of this talk or any other talk that I gave are under speaker.com. If you don't like to rewatch talks, or you don't like to hear me again, I wrote 3 articles about those 3 parts that I've been talking now with some code, so you can copy and paste codes and try in your application. I want to encourage you to take a look of the Introduction to Web Accessibility course in edX. It is officially done by the W3C, which is the community that creates the HTML and CSS standards. So it's very, very valuable. And I want to leave with a couple of thoughts and sentences that I think they're very important. So it is not just about disabled users being able to access your website. It's about everyone being able to access your website. As I said, you can maybe forget your glasses at home one day, or you don't have your mouse with you and you need to tap through a website. Or you have kids, and then you have one kid in one arm, and then you need to use your computer only with one hand. Or like me, I broke my laptop a couple of months ago, so I have my screen completely black. So I needed to buy some slides. And in this moment, if you don't have a second screen to plug in, and then you really want to use a screen reader, in this moment you realize how inaccessible are websites that should be accessible. So if you develop something, try to develop for everyone, and do not adopt your website for disabled people. Just from the very beginning, make it accessible for everyone. Because accessibility is not a feature. Disability is not an option. No one chose it. So we cannot treat accessibility as a feature, as a post process. We will do it later. We need to consider accessibility, or we need to include accessibility and accessibility test in our daily development process. The same as we do with UX review, the same as we do with unit tests, the same as we do with continuous deployment, is part of our daily flow. So it doesn't take more time, because the time that you put an alt property in an image, or the time that you put an ARIA label in a button that is not meaningful enough, or the ARIA hidden in an SVG that is purely a decorative icon, it's really 20 seconds. It doesn't take longer. So please do not consider accessibility as a feature, or try to convince your project manager, because accessibility, the responsibility for accessibility is not only in the developers. It belongs to the whole team. UX designers, developer testers, operations managers, CTO, CEO, everyone should push this to make it happen. And that's pretty much. So thanks for hearing.